Welcome, and thank you for being here today for the Back to School Grant webinar. Wherever you're listening from today, I'm glad you're here. I will tell you that the webinar will be online until the grant deadline, so if you have to jump out, feel free to jump back in for a refresher at any point throughout the process if you have questions. I also hope that you find yourself healthy and getting back into somewhat of a normal routine in this unusual time. We certainly find ourselves in uncharted waters, but I'm encouraged every day when I see how our school community has come together to support each other and our students, and I'm grateful to all of you for that. Before we jump into the grant guidelines and the application, I want to give you a little more background about the foundation and introduce myself. I'm Natalie Murdoch. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation for SPS. I've been with the foundation for 12 years, 7 years as the Development Director, and the last 5 years as Executive Director. In both of these roles, I have spent a lot of time in the grant application process, not only from a funder's point of view, but also as a fundraiser who has written a lot of grants as well. Hopefully I can guide you through the process today. For those of you who don't know, the Foundation for SPS is a nonprofit organization. We are completely independent from Springfield Public Schools, but we have the sole purpose to support our schools and students. Our mission is to raise, manage, and distribute funds to benefit the students of Springfield Public Schools. We raise money through campaigns and events that benefit both short-term needs through our Back to School grant program and long-term support through the many permanent endowment funds that we manage. We also help to provide an avenue of direct support to connect donors with specific needs within our school system. Also, just this last year, we expanded our Pick a Project platform, which provides an avenue for SPS staff to post fundraising campaigns to support school projects. Pick a Project is essentially our crowdfunding platform powered by the foundation. Unlike our grant program, where you apply for a particular grant, this is simply a project being posted. It's a campaign that the applicant is responsible for fundraising for. We as the foundation provide the tools and the platform to help support that. We just think it's a really great way to provide a little additional support for our students and our teachers and our staff. We also manage over 100 different funds and scholarships that provide long-term support. Just this past school year, we have awarded over $800,000 in grants and scholarships, many of that through the funds that we manage. Additionally, you may have attended our annual banquet in the past, which is generally held in April. However, this year it was postponed and it will be held on August 31st, at which point we are very much looking forward to celebrating SPS, and hopefully many of you will be able to join us for that event this year. At the foundation, we have 3 full-time staff members. Myself, also Tina Pham, who is our development director, and she is responsible for our fundraising campaigns and our marketing program. We also have Elise Hall, who is our program and administrative coordinator, overseeing our grant and scholarship programs. Elise will be the person who receives your applications, and you'll get confirmation email from her and other correspondence. So she's someone that you will probably be working with a lot more throughout the grant process. In addition to our staff, we also have a 21-person volunteer board of directors, and they are very supportive and serve our foundation throughout the year in a variety of ways. And that is the foundation in a nutshell, which will drive us right into what you're all here for, which is to go through the grant application process. So now I'll direct you to our website where you can find our back to school application, and that is supportsps.org. So when you are on our homepage, you will see an Apply for Funds tab, and at that tab you will select the back to school grant application. And at the top of the application page, you will first see some important dates and just some information to be aware of. The grant writing workshop that we normally hold in person will not be held this year, but the webinar will stay online until the grant deadline. And a lot of the same information you would have gotten at the workshop you will get today through this webinar. And of course, you can contact our office at any time with questions. So the real important date is the application deadline, which will be June 17th. And we will take the applications right up until midnight on that day. But I encourage you not to wait. The earlier, the better to get those projects submitted. And our award date this year will be September 24th. And again, this webinar will not be coming soon. It will be posted on our website until June 17th. Before applying for funding, you will definitely want to read through the guidelines and the criteria for applying for a project. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly here. Applications are completed online, so we'll get into that application as we scroll down the page. Only certified district employees may submit applications. All questions must be answered with a completed budget. District purchasing guidelines must be followed. So if you have questions on whether or not a vendor is approved or what the process might be, you should work with your school secretary or contact the purchasing department directly, and they will be able to answer your questions. Again, the deadline to apply is June 17th. There are a few things that we do not accept applications for. Those are food items, stipends, salaries, the cost of substitute teachers, or capital improvements. And if you aren't sure if your project includes some of these or not, just give our office a call and we'll kind of help guide you through that. Once your application is complete, you will need to print a copy of your application for your records before you submit it. Once you've submitted it, you won't be able to log back into it. So it's also a really good idea to save your application in a Word document as well. You will get a confirmation email from Elise, probably 24 to 48 hours from when we've gotten your application. If you don't get a confirmation email within 48 hours, you should definitely follow up with our office, and our phone number is listed just to make sure that we've received it. There's also no dollar amount limitation on what you can ask for, so we'll accept and review requests for any amount. If your grant is for an outdoor classroom or a garden project, you will need to get that approved through the SPS Grounds Department first. As well, if your grant is for technology, that will need to be approved by the IT department. And their request form, there is a link to their request form on our application page, but you can also contact their office directly with any questions that you might have. And the grant categories are the 4 options you have to submit your project into. Those are student experience grants, which are generally for expenses related to field trips or activities that get your students out of the classroom and out into the community. So the next category is modern learning environment, and that generally looks like flexible seating or things that you might need in your classroom space. Sometimes that could include technology that's not provided by your normal avenues, but generally that looks like classroom furniture. The third category is classroom project grants, and that really is a pretty wide open category and catches a lot of applications. So anything from classroom supplies to equipment, software, things you might need for after school activities, those items all fall into the classroom projects grant. And the final category is for community engagement grants, and that is funding to help with projects and programs that usually include some community piece to it, a family outreach program, or some sort of project that would maybe bring the family members together for a project at the school. Really, it's more about outreach. So those are the types of projects that fall within that category. If you are unsure which category yours falls into, you can always call our office and we'll kind of help direct you. There is also a space in the application where we ask you to tell us why you've chosen that category, so that gives you a chance to explain why you chose one category over another. It's not unusual for a project to fall within multiple categories, but you have to choose one. So that gives you an opportunity to tell us why. And the grant criteria, which is the next item that comes under grant categories, that tells you exactly what we're looking at when we read and rank these grants. So all of the grants that are submitted are ranked by an allocations committee. Those allocations committee members include our board members and our donors. Our staff does not serve as a voting member of any of those committees, but this is exactly what they look at, the grant criteria. So we're looking at need, impact, district goals, whether or not your grant is well written, and whether or not it's sustainable. So I always encourage you to proofread your project, have a friend proofread it. Make sure that you write it without jargon as best you can. Remember that it will be non-educators reading these grant applications, so make sure that they can understand what you're referring to. When it comes to sustainability, we also understand that some projects are simply not sustainable. If you're going on a field trip, that's not sustainable. So we do understand that, but we do look at that when we're looking at each project next to each other. So keep that in mind as you're answering the questions, that these criteria are the things that you need to address within the application itself. And there is another reminder on there that you will get an email confirmation from Lease Hall, and if you don't get that within a couple of days, you need to reach out to us. And so once you get through the criteria and the guidelines, and then you're actually ready to start typing in your answers. So the application starts with just your basic contact information, your school name, the school address, and all the school contact information there. And from the school contact info will be your contact information. So the applicant name and your position. So if you're the librarian or the school nurse or the third grade teacher, we will need that information. If there are more than one of you submitting the application, which is okay, you'll just list both of your names in that provided block, and we'll need the email address of at least one of you, whoever is the main point of contact for the grant. And then we need your principal contact information as well. Your principal's approval is required for the application. So they will also be copied on the confirmation emails and correspondence that you get. So you'll want to make sure that you have talked to them before you've even started to submit the project. And then we're going to ask you for a title, a grant title that will kind of tell us a little bit about what you're planning to do. And then you will have a drop box where you can choose which category. And I mentioned before that we do leave you a box to explain why you've chosen that category. Like I mentioned, sometimes your project could fall into more than one category. So this just gives you a chance to tell us why you chose that particular category. The next question is how many students and what grade levels the program will service. So you can give us an exact number of students. If you have it, we know that sometimes you don't always know exactly how many students you're going to have. You have a little bit of extra space to talk a little bit about your student body, just some pretty basic information. If your project is for third graders, you might not need to say much more, but if you're a high school teacher and your project is just for, Chemistry 1 students, or if your project is for special needs students, you have an opportunity here to just give us a little bit of an overview of that student population. Then we're going to ask you if it's a continuation of a previous program. So if it is, that's okay. We just want a little bit of background on that program. And the dollar amount that you have requested, as I mentioned earlier, you can ask for any amount. We're going to ask you if you have asked for funds from another source, and we just would like to know. So you may have asked from your PTA. You may have a Pick a Project campaign online. You may have asked another nonprofit foundation. We just need to know that information. And then your budget box is where you're going to tell us about the items that you're planning to purchase. So each item will need to be listed out, and you will need to include the vendor, the quantity, the unit price, the total price, and then I mentioned the vendor. So I will pull up an example of what that needs to look like. So I completely made up these numbers, but this just gives you an idea of what the format should look like. So if Osmo is the software, 5 units, $50 per unit, the total price is $250, your supplier is Osmo. If it's for a field trip, your transportation cost is 60 miles to $2.06 per mile, and the total price being $62.06. So the supplier would be SPS Transportation. So if this was your whole project, you'd add the $250 plus the $62.06, and that would be your total budget, which would also need to match the total amount that you're requesting. So you just need to put as much information in there as you can with the totals being clearly listed. And we do have a budget notes block. So if there are anything you need to explain or any information that you want to give about the budget, we give you an opportunity to just give us a quick synopsis if you weren't able to explain it clearly in your budget. And so the next question is when you get to talk about your grant and tell us about your project. So describe the project, giving us an idea of how you would implement it, exactly how the funds would be used. And I remind you here to write for a non-educator, since those are the folks that will be reading these grants. So we really just want a really good overview so that we can look at that and say, okay, we know what they're planning to do with this project, and here's how it's going to meet some of that criteria and support student needs and that type of information. For the next question about project impact, we're asking you to tell us how this particular project will impact a student's academic achievement and their classroom experience. So a couple of key things that we ask about in relation to Springfield Public Schools is how this project is engaging, relevant, and personal. And so this gives you a chance to kind of add to the overall description to describe the exact impact that you're hoping to have. And from the impact, then we go on to the project objectives. And we do require at least 2 measurable objectives, but there are spaces for 3. And what we're looking for is just really what your objective is, what you hope to accomplish through this project, and how you plan to evaluate that. So each of you will be required to turn in a final report in the event that your grant is funded. And so that is when we will ask you to tell us how you evaluated the project, whether or not you met your objectives. So those are some important details that you'll want to keep in mind. And then the next thing that we're looking at is a reminder about the technology piece. So we ask you again if your project is for technology, and if it is, we won't take it unless it's been approved by the IT department. And so if you haven't asked yet gotten their approval, you need to do that before you even start to submit an application. And we're going to look at what's the timing of the program. So is this a 1-year program? Is it a 2-year program? Is there a chance you're going to need to roll your funds over to the next year? So we're really just looking at the overall timing of the entire project. And a couple other things that we ask are whether or not you could accomplish your goals with partial funding, and if you can or can't, you can explain why in that next box. It does say if yes, but even if your answer is no, you can explain in that box why you could not accomplish your goals without partial funding. And the final piece is to submit the application. So the partial funding question is the last question of the application. I will remind you to print a copy of your application, save your text in a Word document, and then submit the application. We do have an automatically generated confirmation email but in years past, we haven't been able to send those through our WordPress website. The district blocks that email. So that is why you will get a confirmation email from Elise Hall. And I would give her 24 to 48 hours. If you haven't heard from her in 2 days, then you should follow up with us. A few final things I want to leave you with. Remember to proofread your grant before you submit it. Remember to save a copy for your records and follow up with us again if you don't get a confirmation email. Remember that you can call our office if you have any questions at all throughout the process. Also, this recording will stay online until June 17th, so pop back in anytime. The deadline to submit is June 17th at midnight. Our phone number at the Foundation office is 523-0144, or you can email me directly at nmurdock@spsmail.org. Be sure to follow us on social media for other updates. We're at Foundation for SPS on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We really hope that this provides you with some background on the application process, but know that you might have questions that didn't come up throughout this conversation. So please contact us if you have any questions. We have heard it all, and we always are here to help, to walk you through anything that we can. So call us, email us, any way that you can get a hold of us, and we will help you in every way that we can. So I thank you for joining us today, and I wish you good luck throughout the process.